Welcome, welcome, beautiful minds. Tell me, have you noticed it? The silence, the staring, the whispers that stop the moment you walk in. Funny, isn't it? They keep searching for your team, your backup, your secret weapon. But there isn't one. It's just you. You move alone, you think alone, you rise alone, and that's exactly what terrifies them. Because people can predict a crowd, but they can't predict someone who doesn't need one. They need you dependent. They need you distracted. They need you weak. But every day you stand alone, you become the proof that their entire game was built on a lie. Most people believe strength is loud. They think power has to announce itself, gather supporters, and constantly prove its value. But the kind of strength that truly unsettles people is usually quiet. It walks into a room without asking for attention and somehow becomes the center of it anyway. That's what happens when you operate alone. You remove the one thing people rely on to understand you, your dependence on others. Suddenly, they can't predict your next move. They can't pressure your friends to influence you. They can't break your confidence by turning a crowd against you, because your confidence was never borrowed from the crowd in the first place. People are comfortable with patterns. They understand groups, routines, and familiar behavior. They know how to read someone who constantly seeks approval, reassurance, or validation. But when someone becomes comfortable standing alone, following their own path, and making decisions without waiting for permission, that person becomes difficult to read. And what people cannot read, they often fear. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because uncertainty makes them uncomfortable. You'll notice something strange. The less you explain yourself, the more explanations people invent. The less attention you seek, the more attention they give you. The less you react to criticism, the harder they try to provoke a reaction. They begin asking questions you'll never hear. Who's helping them? What's their secret? How are they staying so calm? The funny part is that they're searching for hidden answers because they refuse to believe the obvious one. You simply learn to rely on yourself. Many people mistake independence for arrogance. They assume that someone who enjoys solitude must think they're better than everyone else. But real independence isn't about believing you're superior. It's about understanding that your peace is too valuable to trade for constant approval. You stop chasing invitations. You stop forcing conversations. You stop shrinking yourself just to make insecure people comfortable. That shift changes everything. When people can no longer control your emotions, they lose one of their favorite tools. They can't manipulate you with guilt because you know your worth. They can't intimidate you with rejection because you've already learned how to stand alone. They can't distract you with drama because your focus has become stronger than their noise. Every failed attempt to shake you only makes them wonder why nothing works anymore. The world teaches people to depend on applause from childhood. Many are rewarded only when someone else approves. Over time, they begin measuring their value through opinions instead of principles. But once you stop living for applause, you become incredibly difficult to influence. Compliments don't control you. Criticism doesn't define you. Popularity doesn't impress you. Your direction comes from within, and that's something very few people understand. Some individuals will secretly admire your independence while pretending to dislike it. They'll criticize your distance, but quietly wish they had your discipline. They'll call you cold because they can't imagine protecting their energy the way you protect yours. They confuse emotional control with emotional absence. They mistake boundaries for hostility. In reality, you're simply refusing to waste your life explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Operating alone doesn't mean rejecting everyone. It means refusing to become emotionally dependent on people who disappear the moment life becomes inconvenient. It means building a mindset that remains steady whether you're surrounded by applause or standing in complete silence. That kind of stability can't be borrowed. It has to be earned through difficult days, lonely nights, painful lessons, and countless moments where you chose growth over comfort. Eventually, people realize they can't predict your next move because your decisions aren't based on trends, pressure, or public opinion. They're based on purpose, and purpose doesn't need permission. While others spend their energy watching you, questioning you, and trying to figure you out, you're already focused on the next step. That's why your independence feels intimidating. It reminds everyone around you that the strongest prison isn't made of walls, it's made of dependence, and you quietly found the way out. There are people who don't actually want to become stronger. They simply want everyone around them to become weaker. That way, they never have to confront their own fears, their own lack of discipline, or the uncomfortable truth that they settled for less than they were capable of becoming. It's easier to pull someone down than it is to climb higher yourself. That's why genuine strength often attracts resistance instead of applause. You'll notice that the moment you begin changing, the reactions around you begin changing too. Not everyone celebrates your growth. Some people become strangely uncomfortable. They question your decisions. They joke about your ambition. They tell you that you're doing too much or taking life too seriously. On the surface, it sounds like harmless advice. Underneath it, however, is a simple message. Please don't become someone who reminds us of what we refuse to become. Weakness is contagious when it's accepted as normal. If everyone around you is making excuses, your discipline exposes those excuses. If everyone is wasting time, your focus becomes a silent accusation. If everyone depends on validation, your confidence, without approval, becomes difficult to understand. You never had to criticize them. Your actions already said everything they were trying not to hear. This is why some people try to distract you rather than defeat you. They know they can't stop your potential directly, so they attack your attention instead. They fill your mind with unnecessary drama. They encourage bad habits disguised as fun. They invite you into conflicts that have nothing to do with your purpose. Every minute you spend reacting is a minute you're not building. They don't always need to destroy your future. They just need to delay it. Pay attention to how certain people behave when you're making progress. They become experts at pointing out your flaws, but somehow remain silent about your improvements. They remember every mistake you've ever made, but conveniently forget every obstacle you've overcome. That's because acknowledging your growth would force them to admit that change is possible, and that realization would leave them without excuses. The strongest people understand that energy is limited. They don't waste it proving themselves to doubters. They invest it into becoming undeniable. Every workout, every book, every skill learned, every difficult conversation handled with maturity becomes another brick in a foundation that no opinion can shake. While others are obsessed with appearances, you're quietly building substance. One of the greatest traps in life is believing you must lower yourself to keep everyone comfortable. You start hiding your intelligence so others won't feel insecure. You minimize your goals because they sound too ambitious. You stay silent about your dreams because someone might laugh. Little by little, you begin editing your own life just to fit inside someone else's limitations. The tragedy isn't that people underestimated you. The tragedy is when you start believing them. Strength isn't about never feeling fear. It's about refusing to let fear become your leader. Every confident person has experienced doubt. Every disciplined person has faced temptation. Every successful person has questioned themselves at some point. The difference is that they kept moving while others kept waiting for perfect certainty. Progress belongs to those who act despite discomfort. There will always be voices telling you to slow down, settle down, or tone yourself down. Sometimes those voices come from strangers. Sometimes they come from people you love. But remember this, advice should be measured by the life it produces. If someone consistently chooses comfort over growth, be careful accepting their definition of success. Their limits don't have to become yours. Real confidence doesn't need permission. It doesn't ask the room whether it's acceptable to improve. It doesn't negotiate with negativity. It quietly wakes up, does the work, keeps learning, keeps failing, keeps adapting, and keeps moving forward. That's why people who depend on weakness become frustrated. Every time they expect you to quit, you continue. Every time they expect you to react emotionally, you stay composed. Every time they expect you to doubt yourself, you become even more committed to your purpose. Eventually, the same people who wanted you to remain small begin wondering how you became so resilient. They search for shortcuts, lucky breaks, or hidden advantages because the truth is too uncomfortable to accept. The truth is that you stopped feeding your energy to fear, excuses, and outside approval. You chose growth over comfort, discipline over distraction, and purpose over popularity. And that's a decision no one else can make on your behalf. Noise has become the language of the modern world. Everyone feels the need to announce every plan, defend every decision, and prove every achievement before it has even taken shape. People confuse visibility with value. They believe that the more they talk, the more powerful they appear. But real power has never depended on constant explanation. In fact, the strongest moves are often made in complete silence, long before anyone realizes what is happening. When you stop announcing your next step, something interesting happens. The people who spend their lives watching others suddenly lose their advantage. They can no longer prepare for your moves because they don't know what those moves are. They can't criticize a plan they've never heard. They can't sabotage an opportunity they never saw coming. Silence removes unnecessary attention, and attention is often where unnecessary problems begin. Many people reveal their dreams too early. They share exciting ideas with people who secretly hope those ideas fail. They ask permission from individuals who have never accomplished anything themselves. Then they wonder why their motivation slowly disappears. The truth is simple. Not everyone deserves access to your vision. Some people don't protect dreams. They poison them with doubt before they ever have the chance to become reality. Silence is not fear. Silence is discipline. It is the ability to resist the urge to explain yourself to people who have already decided not to understand you. It is choosing progress over performance. Instead of spending hours convincing everyone that you're changing, you spend those hours actually changing. While others collect compliments for plans they haven't started, you're quietly collecting results that require no introduction. Think about how much energy people waste defending themselves. Every rumor demands an explanation. Every criticism demands a response. Every opinion feels like an emergency. Before long, their entire life revolves around reacting instead of creating. But when you stop reacting to every voice, you recover something priceless, your focus. Focus is where goals are built. Focus is where discipline grows. Focus is where impossible things slowly become possible. There is a reason confident people don't argue with every misunderstanding. They understand that explanations satisfy curiosity, but results silence doubt. You can spend years trying to convince someone you've changed, or you can quietly become so different that your life speaks louder than your words ever could. One path requires endless talking. The other requires endless action. People often become uncomfortable when they can't figure you out. They expect constant updates, emotional reactions, and predictable behavior. When those things disappear, they begin creating stories to fill the silence. Some assume you're hiding something. Others believe you've become arrogant. A few convince themselves you're failing because they haven't heard from you in a while. Let them believe whatever they choose. Their imagination is not your responsibility. Operating quietly also protects your emotional energy. Every time you share unfinished goals, you invite opinions you never requested. Some will encourage you, but many will project their own fears onto your future. They'll tell you it's unrealistic because they never tried. They'll call it impossible because they gave up too soon. If you listen long enough, someone else's limitations will begin sounding like your own. The strongest builders in life understand timing. They know there is a difference between secrecy and strategy. They don't remain silent because they're afraid of judgment. They remain silent because they know every seed grows best beneath the surface, before anyone sees it. A tree doesn't announce its roots. It simply keeps growing until its strength becomes impossible to ignore. Silence also reveals character. Watch what people do when they don't know what you're planning. Some become supportive regardless. Others become restless because they can no longer monitor or influence your decisions. That's when you discover who respected you and who merely wanted access to your life. Distance and silence expose intentions that constant conversation often hides. Perhaps the greatest advantage of silence is the peace it creates within you. You stop chasing approval because there is nothing left to prove. You stop measuring progress through other people's reactions because they don't even know what you're building. Your attention shifts away from appearances and toward improvement. Day after day, while the world argues, compares, complains, and competes for attention, you're quietly becoming someone whose presence speaks before a single word is ever said. There comes a moment in every person's life when they discover a difficult truth. The crowd can inspire you, but it cannot build you. Growth happens in the hours no one applauds, in the mornings when no one is watching, and in the nights when quitting feels easier than continuing. That is where real strength is born, not in comfort, not in popularity, but in solitude, where every excuse is forced to face the mirror. Most people fear being alone because they've confused loneliness with emptiness. They're afraid that silence will expose thoughts they've spent years trying to avoid. So they keep themselves surrounded by distractions, conversations, notifications, and constant noise. But the person who learns to sit alone with their own mind discovers something powerful. Solitude doesn't weaken you. It introduces you to the version of yourself that has been buried beneath everyone else's expectations. Operating alone teaches lessons that no classroom, no motivational quote, and no cheering crowd can ever provide. When there is nobody left to blame, you become responsible for every decision you make. If you fail, you own it. If you succeed, you earn it. That level of accountability is uncomfortable, but it's also the birthplace of real confidence. Confidence isn't built by hearing you're capable. It's built by proving it to yourself over and over again. Discipline grows differently when you're alone. It's easy to stay motivated when everyone around you is encouraging you. It's easy to work hard when people are praising your effort. The real test begins when nobody checks on your progress. Will you still wake up early? Will you still practice when no one is counting? Will you still improve when there is no audience to impress? Those quiet decisions shape a person far more than public victories ever will. People often chase motivation because it feels exciting, but motivation is temporary. It rises and falls with emotion. Discipline is different. Discipline keeps moving even when emotions disappear. It doesn't ask whether today feels productive. It simply does the work. Solitude strengthens discipline because it removes the dependence on external energy. You become your own coach, your own critic, and your own source of encouragement. There is something incredibly powerful about realizing that your future doesn't depend on applause. The moment you stop waiting for validation, you reclaim control over your life. You stop asking whether people believe in your dreams because their belief was never the deciding factor. Progress isn't determined by how many people support you. It's determined by how consistently you show up when support is nowhere to be found. Solitude also sharpens emotional control. When you're constantly surrounded by opinions, it's easy to absorb other people's emotions. Their panic becomes your panic, their fear becomes your fear, their negativity slowly becomes your reality. But spending time alone gives your mind the space to separate your own voice from everyone else's. You begin making decisions based on principles instead of pressure. That clarity becomes one of your greatest advantages. Many people think resilience is something you're born with. In reality, resilience is developed through repeated moments of discomfort. Every obstacle you overcome without someone rescuing you becomes evidence that you're stronger than you were yesterday. Every setback teaches you how to adapt. Every disappointment forces you to become more resourceful. Piece by piece, you become someone who doesn't collapse when circumstances change because you've already learned how to rely on yourself. The world often celebrates visible success while ignoring invisible preparation. They admire the confidence, but never notice the lonely hours that created it. They applaud the achievement without seeing the failures hidden behind it. They assume your strength appeared overnight because they weren't present during the difficult seasons. What they call talent is often years of quiet consistency that no one cared to notice. Eventually, operating alone changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who needs perfect conditions to succeed. You become someone who creates opportunities instead of waiting for them. Challenges stop looking like barriers and start looking like training. Rejection stops feeling like the end and starts feeling like redirection. You understand that every hour spent strengthening your character in solitude is preparing you for moments that weaker versions of yourself could never have handled. And while others continue searching for people to carry them through life, you become the kind of person who can stand firmly on your own, no matter what storms arise. One of the strangest things you'll experience as you become stronger is that people begin paying attention to you in ways they never did before. Not because you demanded attention, but because your consistency quietly disrupted their expectations. They expected you to quit. They expected you to become discouraged. They expected life to wear you down, like it wears everyone else. But instead of fading away, you kept moving. And when people can't explain someone's persistence, they often replace understanding with suspicion. There are individuals who become deeply uncomfortable when they cannot predict another person's actions. Predictability gives them a sense of control. If they know what you'll say, how you'll react, or where your limits are, they feel safe. But the moment you stop behaving according to their expectations, uncertainty begins to grow. That uncertainty doesn't necessarily mean you've done something extraordinary. It often means you've stopped living according to a script they wrote for you. Watch how quickly assumptions begin to spread when people don't have access to your thoughts. They start creating explanations that fit their own imagination. Some will assume you're hiding something. Others will claim you've changed for the worse. A few will convince themselves you've become arrogant simply because you're no longer available for every distraction they create. The less information they have, the more stories they invent. Silence forces insecure minds to fill empty spaces with their own fears. This is why emotionally strong people don't become obsessed with correcting every rumor. They understand that people determined to misunderstand you rarely change their minds because of another explanation. In fact, the more you defend yourself, the more attention you give to opinions that were never built on truth in the first place. Your energy is too valuable to spend arguing with imaginations. There will always be people watching your life more closely than they're building their own. They analyze every decision you make. They compare your progress to theirs. They wonder why opportunities seem to appear in your path. What they fail to notice are the countless mornings you chose discipline over comfort, the evenings you kept learning while others kept complaining, and the sacrifices that happened far away from public attention. They see the result but ignore the process because the process demands responsibility. The more self-reliant you become, the more difficult it becomes for manipulation to work. Fear loses its grip because you've already survived uncertainty. Guilt loses its power because you've learned the difference between kindness and self-sacrifice. Approval loses its value because your self-respect no longer depends on applause. People who once influenced your emotions begin realizing they no longer have the same access they once enjoyed. And that shift often frustrates those who benefited from your old habits. Some people mistake their obsession with you as evidence that you've become their enemy. In reality, you're often just a reminder of choices they avoided making. Your discipline reminds them of their procrastination. Your courage reminds them of opportunities they never pursued. Your growth reflects possibilities they abandoned years ago. It's easier for them to criticize your journey than to restart their own. That's why projection is so common. People frequently assign their own discomfort to someone else's success. The strongest response to unnecessary attention is not revenge. It is continued progress. Every minute spent trying to prove people wrong is a minute stolen from proving yourself right. Let curiosity remain curiosity. Let gossip remain gossip. Let criticism remain criticism. None of those things can compete with a life built on steady improvement. Results have a remarkable way of making arguments irrelevant. Operating with quiet confidence also teaches emotional detachment. You stop believing that every opinion deserves your emotional investment. Some conversations simply don't deserve your peace. Some accusations don't deserve your time. Some misunderstandings don't deserve another explanation. Maturity is recognizing that protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's necessary if you intend to keep growing. Eventually, people begin noticing something they never expected. The version of you they thought would break under pressure keeps becoming stronger with every challenge. The setbacks they assumed would stop you become lessons that sharpen your focus. The isolation they imagined would weaken your spirit becomes the place where your discipline, resilience, and confidence are forged. That's when they realized the greatest mistake they ever made was believing your strength depended on circumstances, because your real power was never built by the world around you. It was built by the mindset you chose every single day. There is a level of freedom that very few people ever reach. It isn't found in money alone, status alone, or recognition alone. It begins the moment you stop needing strangers to approve of the life you're building. Most people spend years chasing validation without even realizing it. They measure their worth through applause, compliments, social approval, and the opinions of people who have never carried the weight of their responsibilities. The problem with living that way is simple. If someone else controls your confidence, they also control your peace. Validation feels good, but it can become a dangerous addiction. The more you rely on praise, the more you fear criticism. The more you need acceptance, the more you'll compromise your values just to avoid rejection. Slowly, your decisions stop reflecting your purpose and start reflecting what will make other people comfortable. Before long, you're no longer living your own life. You're performing for an audience that changes its opinion every single day. Think about how many dreams have disappeared because someone waited for permission that never came. Someone wanted to start a business but waited until everyone believed in the idea. Someone wanted to change careers but stayed trapped because family members doubted them. Someone wanted to transform their body but quit after hearing a few negative comments. The tragedy wasn't the criticism itself. The tragedy was allowing another person's opinion to become stronger than their own vision. Real confidence works differently. It doesn't disappear the moment someone disagrees with you. It isn't built on compliments because compliments are temporary. It's built on evidence. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes evidence. Every obstacle you overcome becomes evidence. Every difficult decision made with integrity becomes evidence. Day after day, you create undeniable proof that you can trust yourself. And self-trust is far more valuable than public approval. People who constantly seek validation often become prisoners of comparison. They watch other people's success and question their own. They compare timelines, achievements, possessions, appearances, and popularity. No matter how much they accomplish, someone else always seems to have more. Comparison has no finish line. It keeps moving the goalposts until satisfaction becomes impossible. The only way to escape that cycle is to stop competing for attention and start competing with the person you were yesterday. You'll also notice that people have opinions regardless of what you do. If you're ambitious, they'll say you're obsessed. If you're patient, they'll say you're slow. If you're confident, they'll call you arrogant. If you're quiet, they'll assume you're hiding something. If you're kind, some will see weakness. If you're firm, others will call you cold. Trying to satisfy every opinion is like trying to catch the wind with your hands. No matter how hard you try, you'll never hold on to it. One of the greatest signs of maturity is learning that not every voice deserves equal influence. Advice should be earned, not automatically accepted. Listen to people whose lives demonstrate the wisdom they speak. Learn from those who have walked the road you want to travel. But don't allow random criticism from people with no vision to redirect your purpose. A person who has never built anything meaningful cannot define the limits of what you're capable of creating. There will be moments when standing by your convictions feels lonely. You may lose friendships, disappoint expectations, or be misunderstood by people you care about. Those moments are painful, but they also reveal something important. They show whether your identity was built on truth or on approval. If your character collapses the moment someone disagrees with you, then your confidence was never yours to begin with. It belonged to whoever was clapping the loudest. The strongest individuals aren't fearless because life became easy. They're steady because they stopped allowing outside voices to dictate inside beliefs. They understand that success is not the reward for pleasing everyone. It's the reward for remaining consistent with your purpose, even when applause is absent. They no longer waste energy proving their value to people determined not to see it. Instead, they invest that energy into becoming wiser, stronger, calmer, and more disciplined every single day. When you reach that point, something extraordinary happens. Rejection no longer destroys your confidence because your identity isn't built on acceptance. Criticism no longer controls your emotions because you've learned to separate useful feedback from meaningless noise. Praise becomes appreciated but unnecessary. You walk your path with quiet certainty, guided by principles instead of popularity. And that is the moment you become truly unstoppable, because the world can only manipulate those who still need its permission to believe in themselves.